Hello, folks. Welcome to Dangerous Ideas. This is day 164 of Israel's special genocide operation. 31,645 Palestinians are confirmed murdered by Israel. You've got 73,676 have been wounded. And thank you for joining me, your favorite, I hope, anti-Zionist Jew in the entire world. Thank you for being here. And we're going to get into that. We're going to get into so many important stories that are happening right now. I'm also later on the show going to have Medea Benjamin, co-founder of Code Pink, who I've brought you many a video over the past several months of her accosting Congress people, doing what I would call the Lord's work if I weren't an atheist, but doing amazing work accosting Congress people and demanding they somehow at least respond to the accusations of this ongoing U.S.-backed genocide. I'm also going to bring you some pretty mind-blowing information about how many non-Israelis are in the I.D.F, which a lot of people don't know, and also furthers the understanding of this being a U.S.-backed genocide and not just Israel's fault or Netanyahu's fault, as some of the administration would like you to believe nowadays. Al Jazeera, just to give you some of the updates, is saying the world, along with Al Jazeera, is condemning the arrest and beating of an Al Jazeera journalist, Ismail Agul, during a raid in Gaza City's Al-Shifa hospital. So Israel, the I.D.F, went into a hospital to, attack, murder, and otherwise harm those in the hospital in Gaza, and went on to kidnap and beat a journalist that I believe we still don't know where they're holding this Al Jazeera journalist that they have arrested and beaten. The article says the UN stands against the harassment of journalists after Al Ghul's arrest, as rights group Committee to Protect Journalists calls in the incident, or the indecent, as the article says, deliberate attempt to cover up Israeli assault on Al-Shifa hospital. In case you need a reminder, there's been over 130 journalists murdered by Israel since the beginning of this thing after October 7th. And that is far more than the number of journalists killed in the Vietnam War, far more than the number of journalists killed in World War II. And there's a reason for that. It's because back then they were not targeting journalists, whereas Israel is targeting journalists. Of course, that's a war crime, but Israel don't care. Israel's the honey badger, right? Israel don't give a shit. Israel gonna war crime. And I just thought I'd bring you this up top before I get into the I.D.F soldiers, that story. But you guys know that TikTok, the U.S. is trying to destroy TikTok, and they're trying to sell it, to force it, being a Chinese company, to sell to an American company that can more effectively censor it, which is also kind of ironic because I was banned back in December. So it is being censored now. I mean, people like me are being banned without right to appeal even. So there is censorship going on. TikTok's trying to be like, look, we'll censor stuff, we promise. And the U.S. government is like, nah, it's not enough, though. You're not censoring enough for our likings. You're not covering up all of the truth about what's going on in Gaza. You're not covering up all of the truth about the U.S. proxy war in Ukraine. And so really, we're going to force you to sell to a U.S. company. Well, I'll bring you this update that I did not have the last time I brought you information about TikTok and about how the real reason is information on Israel. Yes, in Israel's special genocide operation. Yes, they want to stop it anyway because it is a Chinese company. They don't like a Chinese company having that much power to get information out across the U.S., even though there's been no signs that TikTok does anything different than your other mainstream, not mainstream, but social media outlets. But anyway, and thank you so much, 11th Hour, for getting the donation started off. Some spare change for one of my heroes. Can't thank you enough. You guys keep this show going. And yeah, I couldn't do it without you. And by the way, for those of you not watching this live, I know even though thousands of you will watch it live, I know 95% of you watch it after the fact. You can now also support it on YouTube by clicking the thanks, or sometimes it's just a $ sign and a heart. which, says a lot about capitalism. The dollar sign and the heart are one and the same now, right? If you love something, it's dollars. But anyway, anyway, you click that and you can donate. You can click it. You can throw a little change my way anytime you want. Doesn't have to be live. Doesn't have to be a super chat. And you can do that. And that's incredible. Thank you to those of you doing that as well. But we now have the information that the person who will likely be buying TikTok, if the Senate passes this bill forcing TikTok to sell, will be none other than former Treasury Secretary, 17-year Goldman Sachs alum, Steve Mnuchin. I'm sure that's who you guys were thinking, like you'd want running TikTok. Like you'd think we're really going to be unbiased. It's going to be legit. We're going to want a real legit social media platform. I'm like, you know what? Former U.S. Empire Treasury Secretary and Goldman Sachs marionette puppet Steve Mnuchin. I'm sure that's what you thought. I'm sure that's where your mind went. And luckily, it could be happening. Steve Mnuchin has said that he has put together a consortium, a group of investors, which means rich F word, keep it clean for the kids. And anytime you hear the word investor, it just means douchebag. It means really rich douchebag. You've never heard of like an investor who's like kind of poor and nice, like a nice guy, just kind of poor guy. He's like, yeah, I have $7, but I'm gonna put it in there. Well, he's an investor. I mean, by definition, he is an investor. Whenever you hear investors in one of these articles buying up U.S. corporate entities, it just means rich douchebag. You can just read it as that. Former Treasury Secretary Mnuchin, according to the AP, said Thursday that he will put together an investor group to buy TikTok after the House passed a bill that would ban the popular video app. Because, when the truth starts getting out there too much, ban it. That's freedom, right? We have freedom right here in America. We're free to say whatever we want unless it ends up being too true. And then they get rid of it or they ban it or they sell it to Goldman Sachs. That's freedom right there. Mnuchin, who served under President Trump, said he had spoken to a bunch of people about creating an investor group that would purchase the popular social media company. This should be owned by U.S. businesses, Mnuchin said. Yeah, we're not like China at all. By the way, one of the things Mnuchin said was he goes, well, if there was an American company like this in China, they wouldn't let it operate at all. That's what he said. And this is a perfect impersonation of Steve Mnuchin. They wouldn't let it operate at all. I believe you guys have been saying for a long time that we're supposed to be different than China. Isn't that like your thing? You're like, we're not like China. They censor things. Even though the most famous Chinese dissident in modern times, perhaps, Weiwei, has said that the censorship here in the United States and the West is actually more powerful and more pernicious than in China. But anyway, that aside, I thought we were supposed to be different from them. No. You're saying we should we should be identical to them. Oh, okay, got it. Also, there's the fact that many U.S. companies make a lot of their money by operating in China. McDonald's, Starbucks, all these large entities, Tesla. I was actually over in China for 4 days this past year. I brought you a video about it. I was there for about 4 days. And you know what I saw everywhere? Teslas, Starbucks, McDonald's. They're everywhere. And of course, non-U.S. companies that are also big, H&M, Zara, they're all there. They're all there because this garbage, xenophobic nationalism, the parasite that is in your brain that is nationalism, it's mainly for us. It's mainly for the average folks to try to in order to dumb us down and make us afraid and scared, hide under our kitchen table. That's what you're easier to control when you're afraid. Meanwhile, all the corporations are like, yeah, we just opened our China store. We just opened our Beijing store. We just opened actually not our China store. We just opened 100 China stores. That's what they like to tell you. But, to keep us scared. It's good for that. But okay, moving on to this about the I.D.F, about what type of soldiers make up the I.D.F in the Israeli apartheid regime. And Abby Martin, who's always doing amazing work on this. Of course, I've brought you many interviews with my friend Abby. She's incredible. She does just awesome work on so many topics, but Gaza and Palestinians' rights have been one of the big ones. Of course, she's been attacked for it, maligned, censored, all those things. But here's just a 30-second moment from one of her videos that said she said this moment, this 30 seconds got her video taken down by Oh, it's okay. It says it on the beginning. I was like, where am I reading here? The following clip caused the full Empire Files episode to be removed from YouTube due to complaint from friends of the I.D.F. This 30 seconds was too naughty for YouTube, and I think it tells us a lot.
With Israeli troops enforcing their right to Palestinian land, many are people like these.
I'm Maya. I'm from Palo Alto in the San Francisco Bay Area.
Hi, my name is Caleb from San Francisco. I joined the I.D.F. about 2 years ago.
I arrived in Israel 4 months ago from Cape Town, South Africa.
I'm Shakiraz. I'm a lone soldier from Atlanta, Georgia.
Florida, USA, Tampa Bay.
My name is Eitan. I'm a private in the Nachal Brigade. I'm a lone soldier from Atlanta, Georgia.
I always wanted to be Israeli and couldn't think of any other way to be more Israeli than to join the army.
So you'll notice something about these folks. Not really just Israeli, right? Not just Israeli. Many of them strong ties to America, some of them American born. I looked up the numbers of exactly how many we're talking about here. And this is according to Haaretz, a Israeli newspaper. At any given time, this is from 2022, at any given time, around 1,200 American Jews serve in the Israeli army. And then I looked up how many all told, not just American, but because one of them said they were South African and, various other countries. And they're called lone soldiers when they're not well, I'll read the definition rather than stumbling through it and making it sound completely incomprehensible. A lone soldier is a soldier in the I.D.F. with no family in Israel to support him or her. A new immigrant, a volunteer from abroad, or an orphan, or an individual from a broken home. So these are people who do not have contacts to Israelis, basically, no family there, and they just show up and join the army. And this article says there are over 7,000 lone soldiers currently serving in the I.D.F. About 45% of those are new immigrants coming from Jewish communities all over the world. Now, this is unlike most other militaries. Most other militaries, and yes, there are exceptions where militaries get their resources drained, like Ukraine, and they start saying, anyone who wants to shoot a gun, come on over. But in general, you can't just show up to a country and say, I want to be in your military. In Israel, the way it works is if you're Jewish anywhere around the world, you can probably become a citizen of Israel almost instantly if you go there. So I could run to Israel and say, I want citizenship, and they would often give it to you. Now, with me, they'd probably watch my videos and say no. But for most people, for most Jews around the world, you could go there and become a citizen, which means you can be American, American born, American bred, a good old boy. I don't know if that many Jews talk like this, but, a couple in my family. I have a couple of people that talk like this. But you can show up to Jerusalem there and say, I want to shoot guns for you. I want to harass people and be part of your oppressive apartheid regime. And they will go, come on over. Why not? I don't know why I'm making everybody sound like T. Boone Pickens or something. But oh, wait, I didn't mean to put the screen back up. But so there are large numbers. And I said 7,000 was the number there. That's less than 1% of the number of people in the I.D.F. But of course, those are lone soldiers. Those are people with like no family in Israel. Whereas many of the I.D.F. have dual citizenship, U.S. and Israel, or their parents have dual citizenship, were born, raised in America, then moved to Israel and got citizenship and became part, and then their kid becomes part of the I.D.F. It is mandatory for you to be in the I.D.F. in Israel. And this just goes to show this is just another factor in terms of this being both the Israeli experiment of an apartheid colonial state, but also in terms of the U.S. empire backed. So this is a U.S. backed Israeli apartheid system, a U.S. backed genocide in Gaza that is happening right now with over 30,000, closing in on 32,000 known killed, but also that doesn't count the 10,000 under the rubble. So we're talking over 40,000 people in 160 days. It is really unprecedented in the past few decades, this amount of indiscriminate killing. It's extremely unprecedented. And I'm going to go through, actually, in a few minutes or a bit later, some of the details of how we know this is a genocide, et cetera. And I've read the definition of genocide on here before. But what I find fascinating, which I'll go into later, is that I'm being attacked by some new outlet that is clearly doing Israeli propaganda. And they're throwing at me on Twitter, all these, specifically me, all these, like, oh, this is what genocide is. And you'll see. It's a lovely bunch of propaganda. But it goes deep into Israeli society, this U.S.-backed platform. This is a U.S. connection. Really, Israel in general is a U.S. and Western experiment. Yes, when it first started, it had more connection maybe to Europe, but it is a U.S., an arm of the U.S. empire. And I just thought I'd bring you one other little facet of that. Mr. Benjamin Netanyahu. Good old buddy Netanyahu. Genocidal maniac. You know him. You know him well. You know him from such roles as genocidal maniac, complete racist. What was that awesome thing he was in? Endorsing the murder of children. Just great guy all around. You know him from those things probably. But anyway, here's Netanyahu's history. So his parents were, I believe, Americans, but moved to Israel. He was born in Israel, but between 1956 and 1958, and again 1963 to 1967, his family lived in the United States. Boy, that's a lot of time in the U.S. He was in Cheltenham Township, Pennsylvania, a suburb of Philadelphia, while his father taught at Dropsy College. Benjamin attended and graduated from Cheltenham. It very much sounds like a British name, like it should be pronounced Cheltenham, like that or something. But seeing as it's outside Philly, it's probably pronounced Cheltenham. And you can argue about who's right and who sounds dumb. I mean, I think they both sound dumb, so I don't know whether it should be Cheltenham or Cheltenham. But anyway, Cheltenham High School is where he graduated in Philadelphia. After graduating from high school in 1967, Netanyahu returned to Israel to enlist in the I.D.F. But he comes back to the U.S. in late 72 to study architecture at MIT. After briefly returning to Israel to fight in the Yom Kippur War, you always go back to Israel just to fight in a good war. Just fighting a little bit of war. Come on home. Anyway, returned to the United States again under the name Ben Nitte. Completed a bachelor's degree, so he's changing his name over and over, in architecture in February 1975. Earned a master's degree from MIT Sloan School of Management in 76. Boy, this sounds like a pretty American dude, doesn't it? At that time, he changed his name again to Benjamin Nitte, spelled slightly different than the other one. This one ends in an I. This fact has been used by his political rivals to accuse him indirectly of lack of Israeli national identity and loyalty. Basically, he's changing his name to be more Americanized. He's in America a lot, graduates from American college. Netanyahu was headhunted to be an economic consultant for the Boston Consulting Group in Boston, Massachusetts, working in the company between 1976 and 78. At the Boston Consulting Group, he was a colleague of Mitt Romney. Oh, good old Mittens. Oh, Mittens Rom, with whom he formed a lasting friendship. This guy sounds about as American as apple pie. This is a very American guy who now runs the completely genocidal right-wing maniacs of Israel. And yet again, just at every turn, we see that this is a U.S.-backed experiment. This is a U.S.-backed genocide, a U.S.-backed apartheid. And even many people in the I.D.F. are actually not Israeli, at least not by birth. Many of them don't even have family in Israel. But Israel is also considering bringing in more non-Israeli troops. Israel considers, this from NBC, Israel considers use of private security contractors to protect Gaza aid ships. Yeah, because that's what you want, is lunatic mercenaries, quote unquote, protecting the aid in Gaza. After the aid, every time they drop aid, they either kill people with the aid, or the IDF then starts firing at them and kills them for standing in line for aid. Israel is weighing the use of international private security contractors to help protect the humanitarian aid shipments arriving in Gaza. Israeli officials have brought up the idea to the Biden administration. U.S. officials are wary of having armed American troops on the ground in the Palestinian enclave. But I will also make the point, so I haven't heard any strong reports that U.S. troops are in Gaza. They are definitely in Israel. U.S. has sent thousands of U.S. troops of varying kinds to Israel to facilitate the genocide, to help with the genocide. Even the New York Times covered how the CIA is helping Israel assassinate Palestinians, basically giving them information and targeting, etc. On top of that, you have U.S. drones flying over Gaza to help give Israel intelligence for their genocide operation. You have also the leaked memo from the Intercept. Leaked. It was reported on by the Intercept, but leaked from the Pentagon, telling U.S. troops in Iraq to stand by, to be ready, because they might be used in the ongoing operations in Gaza. So at every level, the U.S. is involved in this. The U.S. is a U.S.-backed genocide. The U.S. Biden sends arms, bombs, ammunition to Israel every 36 hours, a shipment every 36 hours to Israel to facilitate this genocide. And this is just another aspect of it, that we may move into using mercenaries, military contractors on the ground in Gaza. Thank you, 11th hour, for the donation. I have noticed that a lot of the problems we have in the world are a product of human evolutionary characteristics. This needs to be addressed as such. I think you're right, 11th hour. I won't get off on a tangent right now, but there's also, it's a combination of evolutionary characteristics with the systems we have. We have a system that facilitates, rewards, creates motivations in us, feeds off of something that could be evolutionary in order to get us to behave in certain ways, to put money over all else, to actually allow for the destruction of our environment, as we're seeing with the temperatures shooting through the roof, hottest year after hottest year after hottest year, and the forest fires and the flooding and everything. We have a system that uniquely teaches us to behave that way. And there are examples in history of humans with other systems where the system did not push them to behave that way, and you had very different outcomes. So it's a systems problem that is feeding on things that develop in us evolutionarily. I just thought I'd bring you a little extra info here about one of our favorite mercenary groups, Blackwater. Most of you know Blackwater, right? The Blackwater Massacre, where let's see, I'll highlight it on the screen. The Nisour Square Massacre in Iraq, after a shooting incident left 17 Iraqi citizens dead, allegedly at the hands of 4 Blackwater guards. Intensive government investigations, private security reform, and criminal charges ensued. In 2014, an American jury found the Blackwater guards guilty of various criminal charges, from murder to weapons offenses. However, they were then released later, so they didn't actually serve their time. They didn't actually spend that long in prison because, they're good guys just murdering the bad guys. So why are you gonna lock them up? It's not cool. It's not cool. Just let them murder innocent civilians who are on our bad guy list, In response to a widespread public backlash resulting from the incident, Blackwater changed its name twice, actually 3 times, changed management, and changed ownership hands. First, it changed its name to Z. Then it changed its name to Academy. And now it's it merged with Triple Canopy to become something called Constellus. So that's how many times you have to change your name in order to get away from massacring innocent people in a square in Iraq. You got to have 3 name changes. Benjamin Netanyahu, I think, only had 2. He might have had 3 over his course. We're noticing a lot of name changes, right? If you're looking to avoid accountability for being a horrible human being or a horrible group of human beings, you got to keep changing that name up, all right? So Blackwater also sounds a little nefarious. Then you go to Z, which is spelled XZ, which is almost unpronounceable. So next you go to unpronounceable name. Then you go to academy, which is a word that is just so common and doesn't sound like, when you think academy, you don't think, oh, a bunch of murderous, frothing at the mouth, insane lunatics. So it's a word that's just bland and you're like, that doesn't sound like lunatics. And then you make one final jump to something that no one remembers, and it happens to be Constellus. So next time you see Constellus, you'll know what that is. Thank you so much, S, for the donation. $20. You guys are rocking it today. Thank you. Honestly, I can't thank you enough for how much you keep this show going. It is not easy to do it with all the suppression I'm fighting. QWERTY says, I find it interesting how Zionists are oddly quiet about Nazis in Ukraine. They accuse everyone except actual Nazis of being Nazis. Very true. That, well, because Israel and the Zionists, and in case you need a reminding, Zionist does not mean Jewish. I am Jewish and anti-Zionist. There are also more Christian Zionists in America than there are Jews in the world. That is a fact, because many Christians across America, millions and millions, are strongly Zionist, strongly support the Israeli state. Some of them, the evangelicals, believe that all the Jews need to be in Israel in order for the end times to come and for those Jews to then burn in hell. So, you know, they're really trying to do it for the right reasons, clearly. But yes, Israel, like the U.S., is not outspoken at all about the Nazi alignment in Ukraine that has been used in the proxy war against Russia. And, you know, it's for the same reasons. Israel supports the proxy war in Ukraine because they are a part of the U.S. empire entity. So they're a tentacle. For them to be opposed to the proxy war in Ukraine, it would be like one of the tentacles of the octopus going, you know, I don't want to hang out anymore. I don't agree with the way you're going. So I'm just going to pop off and wiggle off this way. And I assume it would look kind of like an inchworm leaving is how I assume a tentacle would run off. But they don't do that, right? Tentacles tend to stay attached. Okay, let's see, which one do you do? I'm going to show a couple of minute video, but it is hilarious. So you're going to love it. And it does 2 things. One is it's an amazing video of our Congress being harassed, which I love. It's one of my, you know, I don't want to just, I might rub myself to it. You know what? I don't want to talk myself. I want to talk about it right now. I'm gonna keep moving. But I love seeing Congress be harassed, especially about the fact that they're endorsing genocide, which they are. Medea Benjamin has done an amazing job of this. So not only is this a amazing video, she throws some humor in there as well. But also, I'm having her on the show in, 20, 30 minutes. So if you guys hang out, you will see her in the actual person talking live to you. Can you believe it? Co-founder of Code Pink. Anyway, let's get to this video. I might interrupt it here and there. We'll see. But I think you're going to thoroughly enjoy it. And remember, folks, you can support this show. You can support this show by becoming a member at leecamp.net, but you can also support it if you're logged into YouTube. You see a little thanks button under the video, next to the video, somewhere around there. It says thanks. It probably has a heart or a dollar sign. Click that, and you can throw a tip my way anytime you watch it. Doesn't need to be live. So I know, tens of thousands of you watch these later. So click that, throw a tip. All right, here we go.
Those uncomfortable inquiries like a
sorry, I started a little late. These are 10 tips for how Congress can avoid responding to why they're endorsing genocide.
pro.
Tip number 1, report the weather instead.
Have you called for a ceasefire?
It's a pretty day in Washington, D.C.
Do you
it's
support more
actually a
weapons
nice day.
to Israel?
It's much warmer than you would think.
Do you support more weapons
is,
to Israel? Really, this
really,
is a serious issue.
Really good.
We're not asking for a weather.
So close.
Tip number 2, eat a smoothie. The classic smoothie distraction technique.
While you're eating, are you thinking about the people of Gaza who are starving?
Tip number 3,
Yeah, I do love the guy who just kept talking about the weather. It was like, if I just filibuster with weather, then I don't have to respond to the fact that I'm helping murder children. You know, that often works. And that would work if you were there too. Like if you were sitting there next to kids dying, if you just keep talking about how it's a nice sunny day, then all is well. All is fine.
Pretend you're on the phone.
Will you vote
I'm on the
for?
phone, sorry.
Yeah, it's just a yes or no.
I'm on the phone. Thank you.
Will you say no to more weapons to Israel?
Can I ask the reason for that?
Although, could you imagine, like, I'm on this phone call, even if it were a real phone call, which you can tell many of them it's not. But even if it were real, this phone call is way more important than responding to why I'm endorsing genocide. Absolutely. It's right. I got to talk here.
I'm sorry, I'm making a call.
But sir, there's a genocide occurring right now, and 600,000.
By the way, they don't put this out. He says I'm making a call, and then because she ignores it, he puts his phone away because he wasn't making a call. So he just goes, "I'm making a call." Never mind, putting that away.
Oh, can you hear me? Oh,
Tip number 4, have your staffer talk to you.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So that would be the concern. We can address it one of the two ways.
Yeah. Congressman,
So
if you called for a ceasefire in Gaza,
with them.
Congressman, if you called for a ceasefire,
And then we can go forward.
I love this one because you can tell the two of them, he and his staff member, they're saying nonsense. Like, there's no way the two of them are having a real conversation, but they're trying to pretend to. So it's just, it's nothingness while Medea asks them if they support a ceasefire.
are you in favor of more weapons to Israel during this time of a genocide?
I think the next step will be for me to call.
Hello.
Tip number 5, act like you're deaf.
Hi, Congressman. I remember seeing you the other day. Are you going to call for a ceasefire in Gaza? Last time we talked, you didn't answer my questions. Is there a reason that you're not willing to call for a ceasefire given the genocide and the fact that Rafah is certainly not a safe zone?
Call for a ceasefire? Congressman, if you called for a ceasefire? Hello, Congressman, I'm down here. Have you called for a ceasefire?
Yeah, I figured I wasn't gonna win.
Hello?
Congressman, is your hearing okay? Staff, your congressman's hearing. It's not well.
Congressman, it's a yes or no. Have you called for a ceasefire? Are you in support of more money going to Israel? Am I here? Are you hearing me? Hello? Congressman, can you answer that?
Congressman, how much longer are you going to ignore genocide?
Are you gonna just ignore genocide and you're the public? Aren't you a public servant? Are your ears okay, sir?
I will say this real quick, that even the fact that they're being silent is actually showing how much this has changed since the beginning of this genocide. Like, because if you were to do this exact same thing back, September, August, or whatever, most of these Congress people would probably have quickly, and some of them do, but most of them would quickly shout at you, "I support Israel. Israel's the best. Oh my God, I love Israel." They then start humping a lamppost and saying, "I wish this were Israel." They would be all about shouting their love of the apartheid state of Israel. And nowadays, you see that because they are losing votes, they're losing support, they're being attacked online, it is becoming more difficult for them to outwardly have that position. They all still almost exclusively still have that position. If you were to take another vote in Congress, it would still be ridiculously one-sided to quote unquote support Israel. But they are changed. They're like, this is a change. The fact that they feel the need to be silent when Medea is asking if they support a ceasefire, if they're against the genocide, if they want to send more weapons to Israel, the fact that they need to be silent shows how much things are moving. Like, the needle is moving. Congress is starting to wilt under how horrific this is, which is pretty incredible to see, that our bought off, paid, parasitic shills are actually starting to wilt on this topic. Thank you so much, Daniela, for the donation. You guys make this show possible. It is actually pretty difficult to make this a sustainable model with all the censorship and suppression, but thanks to you guys, it's still going.
Tip number 6, pretend you need to go to the bathroom. Sorry, running to the bathroom. Sorry.
Oh, everybody in the restroom.
Tip number 7, you're late for a vote. Sorry, late for a vote. Late for a vote.
You called for a ceasefire.
I'm rushing to vote.
Okay.
I'm heading to a meeting, please.
Congressman, why do you think we should send more money to Israel?
I don't have time right now. Sorry.
I understand, sir, but it's very, very urgent, and I'm just wondering if you would commit not to send any more weapons to Israel, given that it's breaking our own domestic law, and that Israel is blocking humanitarian aid, which is a war crime.
Again, I've got a committee here to go to.
Tip number.
I also love like the I can't talk to you even though I'm talking to you. I have no time to talk right now. Let me tell you how much I have no time to talk right now. See, as we're walking right now and I'm talking to you, I can't be talking to you because I don't have time to talk right now. Yeah, did I mention I don't have time to talk right now? Talking cannot happen. It's not happening now. It can't happen. There can be no talking. Well, what have we been doing this whole time? We've been talking, but that's beside the point. The point is no talking.
Number 8, tell them to go to your website and read your statement online. Tell them to do their homework.
They're in Gaza.
You know what? I would recommend that you go and look at my website.
Can you just tell me if you have supported it? And how about weapons to Israel?
Number 9, pretend you're texting. But watch out about walking into a lamppost. Tip number 10, ask them if they're a constituent or if they even know your name.
Sir, could you please answer yes or no?
Are you a member of the 1st District of Utah?
I love yeah. Oh, you can only possibly address this if you're a member of the 1st District of Utah. It's a genocide. It's a fucking genocide going on right now in Gaza. U.S.-backed, U.S. shipments every 36 hours of bombs to kill children. And I will only answer you if you're a member of Utah District 1st. What? Shut up. These people are lunatics. I mean, that is the definition of a sociopath. Like, I can't unless you're Utah. Yeah, I can't even know if this is a genocide unless you're from Utah. Just idiots.
You represent the American people. Aren't you proud of what your position is?
I'm very proud.
Well, so what is the position?
You know my name?
It doesn't matter. I'd ask your position.
There you have it, folks.
Do you know my name? I hope not, because you're a piece of human garbage. But thank you so much, William, for the donation and helping make this show possible. Everybody give a high five to William and everybody who's thrown a couple of dollars towards the show. But yeah, so there's Medea being amazing, Code Pink being amazing. Obviously, it's not just Medea. You saw many other Code Pink people. I don't know all their names, or I'd thank them as well. But harassing our Congress people. And, here's the thing is, if you ask me in a larger way, is our Congress important? Sorry. The answer is no. They are a rubber stamp for death and destruction and corporatism and corporate America and inverted totalitarian structure in which large, massive corporations that have more money than we could ever even fathom actually call the shots. So they are borderline meaningless. However, I think this serves a couple of purposes. One is that very rarely you can pressure Congress into doing something that at least pushes the needle slightly. I mean, if all of this harassment just stops Israel from bombing Rafah, you will have saved a bunch of lives. If all of this harassment forces Israel to at least begin actually letting the aid in, and I'm not talking 12 boxes of cereal attached to parachutes, I'm talking actually letting the aid in, you will have saved thousands of lives. So there are things that could happen with this pressure, but perhaps the more important thing is simply that this shows how unaccountable our Congress is, and it helps Americans wake up to just how unaccountable our Congress is, how they don't give a shit, how they will walk right past you endorsing a U.S.-backed genocide and not even respond to you, not even answer you, or say they don't need to respond to you unless you live in some, podunk town in Utah. But I will be talking to Medea in just a few minutes, so if you want to hear that conversation, hang in there. All right, let's get to what Kamala Harris said. I want to tear apart what Kamala Harris said about this ongoing genocide. And Kamala Harris, they've been pointing to her as like she's a slight, voice of sanity, where she actually called for a ceasefire, and it seems a little bit more open to these type of things. Thank you, Sadie, for the donation. Yes, Sadie. Damn right, Sadie. Anybody who donates the next 10 minutes gets a damn right with your name after it, which, who don't want that? But they've acted like Harris is somehow left wing of what you've been seeing from our Congress, and because she called for ceasefire. Oh yeah, only 150 days of genocide, and then Harris said, "Could you maybe stop for a second?" It's bullshit to begin with. But something very important was said by her that this is Times of Israel, which is a Israeli propaganda outlet, and here is Kamala Harris. And she said, the headline says, Israelis deserve security. Don't conflate them with the Israeli government. Israelis deserve security. And the U.S. will, and by the way, genocide is not security, all right? Damn right. Ecuadorian Taco for the donation. Yes. Keep it up. You're awesome, Ecuadorian Taco. I don't think I've ever had an Ecuadorian taco. Israelis deserve security. It's not security when you're committing genocide, okay? That's not security. That's genocide. It's you are bombing children. Are you keeping yourself safe from 4-year-olds? Yeah? Is that what you're doing, Israel? So just that terminology is bullshit. But the security and the U.S. will continue to, quote, stand for the security of blah, 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 blah. I feel like every time they say that, the U.S. supports Israel and the security, they should have to go blah, and just vomit noise. The article says Israel's losing support in Washington over its management of the war in Gaza. How's that for a euphemism from the Times of Israel? It's management of the war in Gaza. Yeah, that's what the issue is as they murder children left and right. It's upper level management. It's just, it's a management issue. We've been looking to hire new management around. We're under new management in this genocide. Anyway, pointing to the Hamas, because genocide is much like a TGI Fridays. It's always, if things aren't run well, it's the management. It's genocide, TGI Fridays, Olive Garden, very similar. Pointing to the Hamas onslaught, Harris specifically mentioned Israeli victims who were horribly abused and raped, rape being a tool of war, unquote. That's her quote. By the way, now, horribly abused, sure, they were taking hostages, and yeah, I have no problem with the term abuse when you're talking hostages. However, even the UN says that an occupied area has the right to defense. So, the right to not just defense, the right to fight against their occupation. Even the UN has that in their writing. So there's a bit of an argument there. But the rape being a tool of war, systematic rape, has not been proven at all. In fact, if you look at the UN report that our mainstream media has said verified the systematic rape, if you look at the UN report, it doesn't actually say that. In fact, it says it saw no evidence. It says that they received information from the Israeli state that there was a lot of rape or sexual assault, but they don't actually come up with any evidence. And in fact, they debunk some of the claims that have been made by Israel. So it is a complete lie about, oh, well, the UN report verified it, etc. Even the New York Times has changed their terminology that they used in reporting on that. If you actually look in the the UN wording, it says that all she came up with, the UN reporter who printed the report, put together and printed the report, was clear information about supposed sexual assault or rape used by Hamas. There has been not one victim to come forward, not one witness either, and zero evidence other than these stories that were put forward by organizations like Zaka, which are just straight up propaganda outlets for Israel. and many of their stories have been completely debunked. For example, one of the most famous ones, which was repeated by the New York Times, was, and I'm sorry, I'm not going to get graphic into it, but it's still so horrific to even talk about a fake story of this. But they said, oh, there were 2 dead girls in one of the kibbutzes who had been raped, and they saw evidence of these 2 naked dead girls. And it turns out that at that kibbutz, there were no 2 dead girls of that age, of anywhere near that age. There was literally not any human beings that had died at that kibbutz that could fit that description. And so that's the type of story you're getting out of Israel. And that it's like the UN was debunking this, and the UN report is called proof of it. It's completely backwards. And here is Kamala Harris, repeating that same thing. But actually, that was not the point I wanted to get to. The point I wanted to get to is she said it's important for us to distinguish, or at least not conflate, the Israeli government with the Israeli people. The Israeli people are entitled to security, again, bullshit term, as are the Palestinians in equal measure. Okay, important thing said here. Don't conflate a people with their government. When a government behaves a certain way, don't just assume that is the people. But a few notes here. One is, over 75% of the Israeli populace agree with this genocide. Now, I think a large reason for that is because Israel forces them all to be in the military, so it forces them to be indoctrinated into all of this belief system. And I am talking heavy indoctrination. So that's part of it. But besides that, you notice Israel is the only place you ever hear our politicians say something like this, right? When was the last time you heard them go, listen, don't conflate the Russian people with the Russian leadership? Listen, don't conflate the Iranian people with the Iranian leadership. Listen, don't conflate the 1.4 billion Chinese people with Chinese leadership. They never say that, because if you say that, it undermines your ability to say, we've got to destroy that country. We've got to create a coup there. We've got to wreck it. We've got to bomb it. We've got to attack it. We've got to have economic war against it. It undermines all of that. And so they never say that stuff. They just say, oh no, Russia does this, right? Iran does this. They never say separate the people from the leadership, because that would completely undermine all of the bullshit propaganda we get. But here you have Kamala Harris saying, in Israel, just in Israel, separate the 2 separate things, the people and the government. Now, the reason that we're hearing this now from Harris and many in our government, even Chuck Schumer, Mr. Zionist himself, Chuck Schumer, is because they're actually looking for a scapegoat for this genocide. They see the writing on the wall. The support of Israel is collapsing. Support for this genocide has completely collapsed. Most of the world, over 80% of the population of this globe, this little tiny ball we all live on and we should all get along on, and as we float through a vacuum of space with nobody for trillions of miles, this little tiny thing that we should all agree to work really hard to save and rescue and make sure it can sustain, that little thing, 80% of all those humans, we are against or live in countries. So that doesn't even include me living in a country that supports this genocide, but live in countries that are not supporting or are silent. Many of them are silent, but are either not supporting or are silent on this genocide. You have a tiny proportion of countries that support, quote unquote, Israel and their genocide right now. Tiny. 20% of the world population. But again, even that does not count people like me who live in the countries that support the genocide, who do not, even though I don't support the genocide. But the reason they're doing this right now is because they need a scapegoat. And the scapegoat is being solidified as like Netanyahu and the Netanyahu regime. If we can put it on him and say, oh no, this genocide, this horror show, this war crime after war crime after war crime after war crime after war crime. Stop me if you've heard this one. War crime after war crime after war crime after war crime. It's Netanyahu's fault. It's just that dude. And we are seeing that they want to put it off on him so that they can force a change in leadership in Israel and then say, it's all fine now. We're going to go back to October 6th. We're going to go back to apartheid state. We're going to go back to open air prison in Gaza. We're going to go back to a horrible situation. That's what they want to happen. And so they're trying to pin it on Netanyahu. And I don't think you should let them. Don't let them do it. Don't let them just pen it on Netanyahu. Yes, Netanyahu is a utter maniac. Thank you so much, Dan. Oh, what did I say I was going to say? Damn right, Dan. Oh, that works even better with his name being Dan. With his name being Dan, not Dan. Damn right, Dan, for the donation. Thank you. You guys are rocking it. And you make this show possible. I couldn't do it without you. All right, let's get to... Oh, man, I got to get to this. What do I got? 10 minutes until... All right, I suppose I could save that one. I got to cover tomorrow. By the way, I do these live streams 4 days a week. Just show up because you're not going to get the alerts. Most of you are not going to get the alerts. Just show up. 3 p.m. Eastern, noon Pacific. Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. I just skipped the hump day to do some humping. So just show up at 3 p.m. Eastern, and I will be here with... But tomorrow, what I got to cover, because I wanted to cover it today, but I'm running out of time, is the Democrats have declared war on third parties. And... this was NBC News was saying this. This isn't just me. And which is kind of hilarious because the Democrats have been at war with third parties for ever. But anyway, I got a lot of details about that, about how much the DNC and the Democrats are now trying to stop third parties even more than they were. Quarty, thank you so much for the donation. Hitler was scapegoated. Hitler was scapegoated? I don't know about that. West ignores the economic factors that led to, oh, well, in that regard, I guess they do ignore the economic factors that led to Nazism. That is true. But scapegoated makes it sound like he was an okay guy. You know, he was just trying to lead his nation, and then people acted like he was doing wrong. Anyway, I misunderstood what you were saying, but okay, so I'll bring you that tomorrow about Democrats declaring war on third parties. But let's get to this one. So I am getting attacked more and more because these videos are getting more and more popular. Again, thank you to the tens of thousands of you watching around the world. Click the thanks button and support the show. But these videos are getting popular, so I'm getting attacked more by Israeli propaganda outlets. And here was a new one I hadn't heard of. If you're looking for some just good old garbage propaganda, then look up this Twitter account, which was coming after me. They were tweeting at me, Quantum Flux, which is straight up pro-Israel propaganda. Oh, and by the way, in a moment, all the rest of this is going to be at rumble.com/Lee Camp. That's coming up in a few minutes. Rumble.com/Lee Camp. And it's free to watch there. As you can also watch my locals page, but it's free to watch at Rumble. Anyway, Quantum Flux is trying to tell us that no, Israel's not committing genocide, because here's how you define these things. And they call it the laws of war. And here are the definitions. And their definitions are laughable. I have brought you the definition of genocide from the Holocaust Memorial Fund website. And Israel is doing every single note of genocide. Anyway. They go, genocide is the deliberate oh, man, could I trip over that 4 more times? Destruction of a group. But even that is a lie. And here's how. Genocide is not the deliberate destruction of a whole group. It is the deliberate attempted destruction of a group or a part of a group for being who they are, for simply being human beings. So that, all it's got to be is a part of the group. You do not have to kill all of a group for it to be genocide. Because, you know, the biggest example of genocide, right, is the Holocaust, or it's the one people most often point to. Not every Jew was killed in the Holocaust. So, absolutely, you can fail at attempting to kill all the people, and it's still genocide. And that is one of the most important aspects of genocide. So what is happening in Gaza? Absolutely genocide. So in those first 4 words, they're already lying to you. And then they say with the specific intent to kill regardless of combatant status. Israel has proven that again and again, both in terms of how they're targeting, which is everyone, but also in terms of the number of people killed. In modern warfare, we see, the number of children killed is, 4 to 8%. In Gaza right now, it's 43 or 45% because Israel is indiscriminately killing everyone. And of course, they want a lot of the death and destruction to be done by disease, which is one of their biggest weapons. They then go on to famine, and this account says a long-term severe shortage of food, according to the IPC, 30% malnutrition rate, 2+ per 10,000 mortality rate. There have been no documented cases of starvation in Gaza. Bullshit. There have absolutely been documented cases of starvation in Gaza. We're seeing it worse and worse, and of course, it's children who are dying first. But they're just lying to you. Proportionality. For each strike, the commander must carefully balance military need versus anticipated collateral damage, which Israel's not doing at all. Israel is just bombing hospitals. They're going after journalists. They're going after medics. They've arrested and tortured doctors. So even in their non-bombing aspects, you see that they are doing the opposite of proportionality, of going after combatants, etc. Anyway, I just wanted to bring you some of the... Oh, and then they say intent is important. Yeah, many Israeli officials have said publicly that they want to erase Gaza, that they want to turn it into a parking lot, that they've called Palestinians animals and all these things meant to dehumanize them, to allow for genocide. But then on top of that, you have Netanyahu 16 days, I believe it was 10 to 16 days before October 7th, holding up a map in front of the UN that had Gaza and the West Bank erased. He wants to erase them from the map. So everywhere you look at intent, you see that Israel is intending ethnic cleansing and genocide. Thank you again, Dan, for the donation. Dan, ripping it up. Love you, man. He says, Lee Camp, should I do taxes this year as a protest? Should I not participate? So here's the thing. I find it hard to recommend to people that they do something that if they, then get persecuted, attacked, arrested, fined, all those things, it's not on me. So, I will recommend people do things like protest, but I don't tell you to do things that are likely to get you long-term arrest or to have your finances destroyed. So many people have tried in the past to not pay taxes in order to not support the U.S. war machine. And, one of them is Noam Chomsky. He tried for a while. I think it was the 80s or 90s. There are many other examples. The U.S. empire will come after you if you do not pay taxes. And, I can't help you with that. So I don't want to see you harmed. I want you to do fine. But so as a tactic, I don't know if if you got tens of thousands of people, it might get the U.S. government's attention. But the truth is the U.S. government can print all the money they need. There won't come a point, at no point, even if you got 100,000 people not to pay taxes, which would be amazing, at no point would the U.S. government go, well, we just can't commit as much war. We just can't. We don't have the money to bomb the children anymore. Would you guys just pay your taxes? Because we need the money to pay for the bombs to kill the children. Like, at no point would that happen because the U.S. can print whatever they want. I think listen, if you want to do it, do it. I am not opposed to you using all kinds of forms of protest. I recommend all various kinds of protests. So please do it all. Okay. Headed over, and Medea Benjamin should be here any minute, but headed over to to rumble.com, free to watch there. You can also watch on my locals page. And if you're watching on Rumble or locals, everything will stay the same there. By the way, join me 4 days a week, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, 3 p.m. Eastern, noon Pacific. I am here, man. I am here bringing you the God's honest truth every day. Oh, looks like Medea is here. So we will be starting that interview in just a moment. Rumble.com/Lee Camp. And join me for that. Free to watch.